Hello everyone, hope you're having a wonderful day today. Welcome to the Film Insight channel. For today's video, we're going to discuss some more businesses featured on Restaurant Impossible and reveal if they're still open. So, sit back, relax, and without further ado, let's get right into the content, guys! Poco's on the Boulevard. For a Season 5 episode, Robert Irvine pays a visit to the failing Poco's on the Boulevard in Kansas City, Missouri. Being an authentic Latin restaurant, Poco's is owned by two sisters named Claudia and Dana who have been running it for 3 months. 7 years before this, their mom purchased the restaurant and has been working as a chef ever since, calling it Poco's since her nickname was Poco. Though after their mother sadly passed from cancer, Claudia was forced to take control of the restaurant. Struggling to transition into a position of power, Claudia heavily relied on the help of other family members. Like how her father helps with delivering fresh produce to the restaurant and her sister works as a server. Naturally, her and her sister get into a lot of arguments, often in front of customers, which drives them away. On top of all this, their mother took out a collection of loans before her tragic passing, so her children inherited her debts. Desperately needing the guidance of a professional, they call out to Robert Irvine for some much needed help. Upon his arrival, he isn't very impressed with the bland and unattractive decor, especially the restaurant's color palette. Meeting with the owners, Irvine learns that while Claudia has been working at the restaurant for 15 years, she has no managerial experience. While observing the service, not only does the famous chef notice that no one in the kitchen respects Claudia, but the food is terrible. Confronting the incompetent staff, one cook seems to laugh at the state of the food, which really angers Irvine. He tells them that if they aren't ready to step up their game, then they should leave the restaurant. Hoping to bring the family together, Chef Irvine gets them to reminisce on their precious memories together. After clearing the tension in the air, it was finally time for the Restaurant Impossible team to turn things around. Changing the menu to include things like pulled pork burritos and pork chops with apple bacon salad, as well as revamping the interior, things were looking great. Fast forward to a few months later, Poco's sales were up by a whopping $20,000 a month, which is fantastic. Reportedly, Claudia expressed that the customers are happy with the changes made and like the new staff. Adding back some old menu items alongside Irvine's, their reviews seem to be generally positive, many complimenting the food. Though after moving locations in March of 2015 due to increased rents, things only went downhill from there. With a huge lack of funds, they were forced to close down in August of 2015, only a few months after reopening. How disappointing. Roar's Tavern. Robert Irvine heads over to Roar's Tavern in another Season 5 episode to attempt to save it from closure. Owned by Lisa Kendall, she bought the restaurant 5 years before the taping of this episode, but it's been open since the late 40s. It became clear very quickly that she didn't have any experience in the field. Thinking she could just turn the restaurant into a popular local hangout, in actuality it's just a ghost town. Losing close to $2,000 a week, Kendall spends all of her savings trying to keep Roar's open, which has robbed her of any chance of funding her son's college education. Considering the fact that she's a single mom with a 15-year-old son and wants to one day pass the restaurant onto him, Kendall calls out to Robert Irvine for some aid. When he finally arrives, Irvine feels that the restaurant is very dated and also notices that it has an awful smell. Meeting with Kendall, she reveals that she took over the restaurant in 2009 after her career in real estate declined due to the economy. Even though the restaurant is almost always empty, she spends close to $3.6 thousand a week on food costs. Employing 9 staff members, she neglects paying herself because she needs to put it back into the business. Revealing that she's currently $40,000 in debt, she expresses that if nothing changes, they'll close down at the end of the month. Irvine believes that the biggest reason why the restaurant is failing is due to Kendall's lack of experience. Surprisingly, the famous chef is impressed with the head cook Stacy, who has a good handle on the kitchen, but unfortunately, all of their food is frozen and microwaved. Predictably so, when Chef Irvine asks to sample some of the best-selling items, he thinks they're utterly horrible. Irvine points out that they're going to need to update not only the decor, but the menu as well. This seems to scare the owner, who is concerned that making too many changes will drive even more customers away. After observing a piss-poor dinner service, the Restaurant Impossible host meets with the staff and tells them to step up or just leave. Following some organization of the business's finances, updating the menu, and not only giving the restaurant a new bar but a brighter dining room, things were looking hopeful for Roar's. Customer and staff alike were incredibly satisfied with the revamped look as well as the improved food. Chef Irvine revisited months later and the restaurant's sales went up to $20,000 a month, much like Poco's. Keeping the majority of the Restaurant Impossible team's changes, Roar's had mostly positive reviews on Yelp and TripAdvisor, although in the end the business ended up closing down in April of 2014, but not without a goodbye message on Facebook. In essence, it read, "This year has not been great for me so far. With the passing of my father, a horrible winter, dismal sales, and many circumstances beyond my control, it is with great sorrow that I'm announcing the closing of the tavern. April 25th will be our last day." Rising Sun Bistro. 3 owners purchased the Rising Sun Bistro 7 years prior to the taping of this episode for $250,000. Peggy, the kitchen manager, takes care of all the ordering, Sally does the cooking and prep, and Jenny helps out with the bookkeeping as well as anything besides cooking. While the business did do great for a while, with time their quality seemed to decline, resulting in a loss of customers. The biggest problem seemed to be the food, which was not only coming out very slow, but wasn't even that tasty. Financially speaking, the restaurant is barely getting by since they have many bills to clear and are $500,000 in debt. The 3 feuding owners called out to someone qualified like Robert Irvine. When arriving at the restaurant, the famous chef is surprisingly impressed with the decor, loving the beams, flooring, and brickwork. Meeting with the owners, Irvine comes to see them as pathetic since they aren't open-minded and bold enough to address the issues at hand. Moving on to watching the dinner service is extremely sluggish, and Irvine notices that there's barely any leadership. Aside from the menu being extremely crowded with tons of items, when the Restaurant Impossible host picks some items to sample, they're poor in quality. Later on, one of the owners, Jenny, asks Irvine to meet her daughter Ella, who swiftly notices is the link between all of them. Using this link to his advantage, he helps the owners realize that they should get their act together for the sake of Ella. After a lot of important discussion, Irvine managed to bring the owners together, which allowed him to finally make some changes to the Rising Sun. Since the place was supposed to be a French restaurant, Chef Irvine revamped the menu to include things like spinach quiche and croque monsieur. Additionally, the famous chef expanded upon the nice decor by brightening up the dining room and switching out the tables. After a few months, the sales did go up by 30% and the owners got much closer than before. However, they decided to put up the restaurant for sale, closing down officially in April of 2014. Whiskey Creek Steakhouse. As our last entry, we're going to discuss a restaurant Robert Irvine attempted to rescue called Whiskey Creek Steakhouse in Keyport, Washington. Owned by Pat Ziernick and his wife Karen, they purchased whiskey over 3 decades ago because they wanted to fulfill their dream of owning a restaurant. The sole fact that they had experience, success, and dedication with other companies motivated them to start one of their own. While the first 20 years were very successful, their profits have plummeted in recent times and they don't have much time left. Calling out to Robert Irvine for some help, when he arrives, he points out that Whiskey Creek looks dated and that the wood is too dark and that the place just smells in general. Talking with the owners, they reveal that the restaurant was making $1.5 million a year at its peak. Wanting to see what changed, Irvine watches the service and notices that the staff does what they want due to the lack of leadership. Asking to sample some dishes, what comes back is a bunch of bland, undercooked, and disappointing food. After taking a look at the finances, both owners should have made $400,000 that year, selling steak at $24 a piece, but they only made $300,000, which was suspicious. Following a staff meeting, it comes to light that some of the staff takes drinks and food without paying for them. Next, after finding out what the issue was, Irvine moves on to fixing the food quality issues by introducing his new menu. This would include dishes like coconut walnut halibut and peppercorn demi New York strip steak with olive oil and poached mushrooms. Finally, Chef Irvine converts the restaurant into a casual steakhouse since they sell a high volume of steak. Revamping the interior, adding in a bar area, and the menu, Pat and Karen are absolutely ecstatic with the changes made. Having a good few months after the taping of the episode, they were actually able to pay off their debts. However, the owners decided to retire in November of 2013, passing the business on to their employees, and it closed down a few years later in August of 2016. Well, that'll be all for today's video here on the channel. I do hope you enjoyed, and if you did, be sure to drop a massive like down below and comment your thoughts. Subscribe for more content like this, and turn on those sweet bell notifications for instant access to our content. Have a good one, guys.